Hello, welcome to my Legend of Korra versus After the Last Airbender video, and I'm just going to compare these two shows because I've seen this comparison done so many times, and I figured it's time to give my 2 cents on this. And as a disclaimer, I like both shows. I don't hate one or the other or anything like that, and I did start watching the show back when Last Airbender was on TV, and it just started. So it's been years since I've been with the show, but anyways, let's get started. Story of each of these two shows. The Last Airbender had a very traditional kind of story structure where one kid was up against this dictatorship nation that was threatening the entire world. And that's been a story that's kind of been done in multiple other shows before. And that's not really a bad thing, so don't take that as me saying, well, this sucks. But I do like that it was that kind of show because it allowed the creators to kind of build the world that you see because it allowed them to kind of show what it is. They explained the rules of bending, it explained all this stuff, and that's really the good thing about Last Airbender is that I don't think that they would been able to do that successfully, be it for 13 episodes or something. But the fact that they had the time to really flesh out almost everything in this world I thought was really interesting and captivating. And since The Last Airbender is a show about a journey, it really allowed you to connect with the characters and the story that was being told because since it was such a basic arc, I mean that allowed them to really think about how will the characters get from point A to point B other than kind of going on over the same kind of stuff that other shows have been doing for eons. uh, So yeah, I do think that that's very interesting, very valid, and I do see why a lot of people cling to the Last Airbender characters because when you take a character on a journey and you're watching this journey, you do form a intimate kind of connection with what you're watching because you're seeing how these characters live outside of what you traditionally expect, and that's really what I like. In season, not in season, what am I thinking? But in Legend of Korra, since it's 13 episodes long each season, and each season is its own self-contained story, it doesn't really allow them to kind of flesh out the characters a lot because everything has to be moving at a very faster pace than Last Airbender. Last Airbender was a very slow-paced kind of show, which is fine. I mean, I don't have anything against slow storytelling, but the one thing I do like about Korra is that I do like faster storylines that kind of move at a fast pace. I mean, slow is nice if you're just for a journey type show like Last Airbender. That's the only time I think slow storytelling kind of benefits from it. But each episode is its own thing that's very interesting and it kind of contributes to the story that you learn about Aang's conflicts and all that, which is really interesting. So that's all I gotta say about the story structure of Last Airbender is that it's a very basic structure that is really interesting to watch. Now, Legend of Korra, as I said before, each story is self-contained each season, and small stuff would carry over to the next season. That kind of ties into each other, very loosely. And I do kind of like that more because it allows to explore more possibilities within this universe. I mean, it shows a lot, colorful characters. It allows the creators to create new villains every season, and that is really interesting to look at because you know, in Last Airbender, you could argue that it's kind of boring to see the Fire Nation being the bad guys every single episode. I mean, there were other villains in Last Airbender, but they all were tied into somehow with the Fire Nation in some way. While in Korra, these villains aren't really connected at all. I mean, the only villains that were kind of connected was Unalaq and the Red Lotus, but that's very loose. But I like that it's each season is its own story and it's very fast paced, and that really gets the momentum going because in the first season of Legend of Korra, when you're watching from Welcome to Republic City to Endgame, it is just like all this is going on, and it keeps turning itself up to 11 in each episode that it contributes to a new piece of the puzzle. And since there's not really a lot of filler episodes in this show, is that when they do have a filler episode, it still moves the characters and the story forward at a very satisfying pace. While Last Airbender, it goes at its own pace and it's just kind of there and it does whatever it wants. But yeah, I really like The Legend of Korra because of its faster pace, storytelling, and how interesting each character is amongst each other. So that's really what I like about The Legend of Korra is that the story structure is a lot more interesting and unique. And each season, you're just like, man, I don't know what they're gonna do next. I mean, how are they gonna top Amon? How are they gonna top the Red Lotus? It's so interesting thinking about the possibilities that they can take these characters to, and I think even with Korra, it allows them to kind of explore different facets of her character as well, and kind of allows to kind of define her in a different way than they defined Aang, because Aang was defined by this legacy that he inherited. So that kind of segues into my next comparison point, which is the characters, which I'm only gonna limit to Aang and Korra since they are the most talked about characters. And I'm gonna say this first. I don't really like Aang compared to Korra because I mean Aang is a good character. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy his story. I enjoy that character as well. But as a character who I relate to the most, I wouldn't say I relate to Aang because Aang at times, which is pretty much 80%, 80, 90% of the time of The Last Airbender, he sounded like a mature adult half the time. And that's fine because he's a monk, so it kind of is to be expected. But with Korra, I think she's a much more relatable character because when you look at The Last Airbender, Aang inherited this legacy of ending the 100-Year War. So really, what will Aang be remembered for when he dies? The 100-Year War or helping the old lady cross the street? It's gonna be the ending the 100-Year War. Um, and when you even see the comics of The Last Airbender, personally, none of that stuff that happens in the comics were that remarkable as ending the 100-Year War in comparison. So there's that. Um, but in Korra, which in Korra's character, I think is much more interesting because she is the most human avatar in my opinion because she has fears, she has vulnerabilities, and in reality, when you look at Korra, she just wants to help everyone. She wants to do her best. She wants to, wake up every morning and do her job as the Avatar. And in reality, when you look at yourself, that's what you do every day. You wake up and and you gotta do your job, and you want to do what you want to do. And sometimes you're a little bit hot-headed when you do things and make mistakes, and you get punished for those mistakes. And that's Korra to the T because like in season one, she, when you first see her, she's already, grasping onto the Avatar title. She's like, I'm the Avatar, you gotta deal with it. And, the first scene really does kind of define Korra's personality right off the bat. While Aang is a character that's like, he never wanted to be the Avatar, which is also understandable and to a degree that is relatable, but it's only relatable to certain people because I think Korra is a character that's more widely relatable, and I do like that more. I do like that this character is more vulnerable and she feels more human. And I said this in another video on my channel somewhere, but when I was talking about the voice in the dark in season one, and that is my favorite episode because you at that point you saw the vulnerable side of that character because yeah she can bend the four elements and she can kick ass and chew bubble gum, but at the end of the day, she's just human, and she's still learning stuff, and she could just be taken out like that if someone really tried, like Amon did, and same with the Red Lotus. They both really tried to end her, and both almost succeeded, and I think that's really interesting. Well, Aang, there was only one season that kind of had a finale that kind of had the villain almost get him, which is the season two finale. But even then, that was just in of its own thing. But Korra has been like three seasons so far where the villain almost succeeded in some way. And the other thing that I also really like about Korra's character is that, and honestly, when you look at season three's finale, that really encapsulates why I kind of like Korra as a character way more than Aang, because when you think about seasons one, two, and three, mostly two and three, there's so much that goes on. Like in season two, she has her past lives taken away from her. she gets the responsibility of being the bridge between worlds, you know, taken away from her. She openly decides, well, the Avatar shouldn't be the bridge between worlds, so let's not do that anymore. And then at the end of season three, she kind of gets dragged through the mud again, and is like, well, your purpose of bringing harmony and balance is now going to be part of the Air no, Air Nation, and that's and when I saw that, obviously Tenzin didn't say that as he's like, okay, Korra, you can sit down and do nothing. We got this. I mean, the sentiment is logical. I feel like with the Air Nation, but it's still hard for Korra to face that because what does that mean for the Avatar? Because and that's what I really like about Korra as a character in the series as a whole is that with Aang, he inherited this prodigy, this legacy of being the ender of the 100-year war. And then when you look at the first three seasons of Korra, what does she have that you know that's going to make the generations, the future generations remember her? I mean, with Kyoshi, it was really forming the Kyoshi warriors and the Dai Li and all that stuff. Roku had kind of put Suzu in his place, and each chapter has its own defining moments. And Korra, you don't really see that. I mean, you can make the case that each season it's her own defining thing, but with the Equalists, for example, that was only an incident that was only contained within Republic City, and once that was dealt with, I mean, it was just kind of okay, it's over, the end. And then with Unalaq, I mean, that was a little bit more on a grander scale, but it was still only tied with um, Republic City and the Southern Water Tribe. And then you see the Red Lotus, and that to me, I think, is the only villain that kind of stuck out. But the other thing as well is that the in season two and three mostly is that in the finale she constantly had to get help from someone. In season two, Korra would have probably died if Denora didn't somehow point out where Rava is, or whatever she did at the end of season two. While and then in season three again, Korra would have died if it wasn't for Denora. But all that kind of helps build this character into this very relatable character that just wants to do her best, and no one wants her. And that's the other thing that, season three kind of highlights is that each villain, in some way, shape, or form, kind of had the same message of, we don't want you, you're not needed, just go home, you're better off dead, basically. Um, and in The Last Airbender, every single person, in some way, shape, or form, told him that, we need you, Aang. So that to me is kind of why I like Korra as the Avatar more. I do think that she's more relatable because in season two, everyone gave her flack for being so hot headed and not really smart, or oh, she didn't notice that Unalaq is a bad guy or something. And in reality though, when you're learning when you're training with any mentor and you see someone that's that you think is a better mentor, you're going to naturally want to have that person as your mentor. And that's really what Korra's position was at the time. And at the same time, she, being a Southern Water Tribe girl, uh, she obviously has love for that nation. So naturally, her judgment is always going to be clouded because of that. And people were like, "Well, how dare she take part in this? She is supposed to remain neutral. What kind of avatar is she?" And it's like, well, you know what? Think about back in the Last Airbender. Aang was about to kill people over killing the Air Nation if it wasn't for Guitar calming him down and all that stuff. I mean, all that stuff it's personal to those characters, and that's really what I like Korra a little bit more, is that she's a lot more personable and uh, genuine with how she talks at times. So that is really what I like about that character, is that she just tries her best in a world that could be argued to be against her. Because that's the other thing, like Korra is in a world that's in a very peaceful, harmonic uh, uh, society. I mean, it's not as unbalanced as Aang's time, where one nation was threatening to take over the world. Korra was really born in the time where, what is she gonna do that's gonna, match up to the 100-year war, and we don't know that yet because the story is obviously still going. Because as I'm making this video, season 4 is still ongoing, but that's really what I like about Legend of Korra more than Last Airbender, is that it's more interesting to see where these characters are going than seeing, because with Last Airbender you kind of expected the ending to come. I mean, be it it ended maybe a little bit different than people might have expected, but you knew from the beginning that Aang was gonna win the day somehow, whatever. With Korra, you just, yeah, you know that she's probably gonna win the day, but you don't know in the long run what does that mean for the future generations and all that stuff. So that's really all I gotta say. Um, Personally, I do like Legend of Korra a little bit more, but I do like both shows. So that's all I'm gonna say. If you have any opinions that you want to add or something, add them to the comment section below. Stay tuned. My art cast episode will be coming up probably shortly after this video is uploaded. So thanks for watching. See you next time.